Just give us a couple of minutes, guys. Give us a couple of minutes. Facing some technical difficulties. We'll be on in a couple of minutes. Should be 2 to 5 minutes.
The events of May 25th begin here. Floyd is sitting in the driver's seat of this blue SUV. Across the street is a convenience store called Cup Foods. Footage from this restaurant's security camera helps us understand what happens next. Note that the timestamp on the camera is 24 minutes fast. At 7:57 p.m., 2 employees from Cup Foods confront Floyd and his companions about an alleged counterfeit bill he just used in their store to buy cigarettes. They demand the cigarettes back, but walk away empty-handed. 4 minutes later, they call the police. According to the 911 transcript, an employee says that Floyd used fake bills to buy cigarettes and that he is awfully drunk and not in control of himself. Soon, the first police vehicle arrives on the scene. Officers Thomas Lane and J. Alexander Koenig step out of the car and approach the blue SUV. Seconds later, Lane pulls his gun, we don't know exactly why, and orders Floyd to put his hands on the wheel. Lane reholsters the gun, and after about 90 seconds of back and forth, yanks Floyd out of the SUV. A man is filming the confrontation from a car parked behind them. The officers cuff Floyd's hands behind his back, and Koenig walks him to the restaurant wall.
All right, what's your name?
From the 911 transcript and the footage, we now know 3 important facts. First, that the police believed they were responding to a man who was drunk and out of control. But second, even though the police were expecting this situation, we can see that Floyd has not acted violently. And third, that he seems to already be in distress. 6 minutes into the arrest, the 2 officers move Floyd back to their vehicle. As the officers approach their car, we can see Floyd fall to the ground. According to the criminal complaints filed against the officers, Floyd says he is claustrophobic and refuses to enter the police car. During the struggle, Floyd appears to turn his head to address the officers multiple times. According to the complaints, he tells them he can't breathe. 9 minutes into the arrest, the third and final police car arrives on the scene. It's carrying officers Tu Tao and Derek Chauvin. Both have previous records of complaints brought against them. Tao was once sued for throwing a man to the ground and hitting him. Chauvin has been involved in 3 police shootings, one of them fatal. Chauvin becomes involved in the struggle to get Floyd into the car. Security camera footage from Cup Foods shows Koenig struggling with Floyd in the back seat while Tao watches. Chauvin pulls him through the back seat onto the street. We don't know why. Floyd is now lying on the pavement, face down. That's when 2 witnesses begin filming, almost simultaneously. The footage from the first witness shows us that all 4 officers are now gathered around Floyd. It's the first moment when we can clearly see that Floyd is face down on the ground, with 3 officers applying pressure to his neck, torso, and legs. At 8:20 p.m., we hear Floyd's voice for the first time.
Please.
The video stops when Lane appears to tell the person filming to walk away. The officers radio a code 2, a call for non-emergency medical assistance, reporting an injury to Floyd's mouth. In the background, we can hear Floyd struggling.
Can we get EMS code 2? We're bleeding from the mouth.
The call is quickly upgraded to a code 3, a call for emergency medical assistance. By now, another bystander, 17-year-old Darnella Frazier, is filming from a different angle. Her footage shows that despite calls for medical help, Chauvin keeps Floyd pinned down for another 7 minutes. We can't see whether Koenig and Lane are still applying pressure.
What do you want? I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my neck. I can't breathe shit.
Bro, get up, get in the car, man.
I will.
Get up, get in the car.
I can't move.
I've been waiting the whole time, man. Get up, get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get in the car right.
I can't.
In the two videos, Floyd can be heard telling officers that he can't breathe at least 16 times in less than 5 minutes.
I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe.
But Chauvin never takes his knee off of Floyd, even as his eyes close and he appears to go unconscious.
Look at him. Get off of him now. What is wrong with y'all? What the f***? He got maced. He got maced.
According to medical and policing experts, these 4 police officers are committing a series of actions that violate policies and in this case turn fatal. They've kept Floyd lying face down, applying pressure for at least 5 minutes. This combined action is likely compressing his chest and making it impossible to breathe. Chauvin is pushing his knee into Floyd's neck, a move banned by most police departments.
Bro, he's not moving.
No, did they f***ing kill him, bro?
Minneapolis Police Department policy states an officer can only do this if someone is, quote, actively resisting. And even though the officers call for medical assistance, they take no action to treat Floyd on their own while waiting for the ambulance to arrive.
You think that's okay? Check his pulse.
Check his right.
Check his pulse.
Get back in the
Check. The man ain't moved yet, bro.
According to the complaints against the officers, Lane asks him twice if they should roll Floyd onto his side. Chauvin says no. 20 minutes into the arrest, an ambulance arrives on the scene.
Get off of his neck.
The EMTs check Floyd's pulse.
Are you serious?
Chauvin keeps his knee on Floyd's neck for almost another whole minute, even though Floyd appears completely unresponsive. He only gets off once the EMTs tell him to. Chauvin's kept his knee on Floyd's neck for a total of 8 minutes and 46 seconds, according to the complaint filed against him. Floyd is loaded into the ambulance. The ambulance leaves the scene, possibly because a crowd is forming, but the EMTs call for additional medical help from the fire department.
You added fire to your run?
But when the engine arrives, the officers give them, quote, no clear info on Floyd or his whereabouts, according to a fire department incident report. This delays their ability to help the paramedics. Meanwhile, Floyd is going into cardiac arrest.
320, if you could let MFD know that EMS needs to, fire needs to go to Parkett 36, your patient is a full arrest now.
It takes the engine 5 minutes to reach Floyd and the ambulance. He's pronounced dead at a nearby hospital around 9:25 p.m. Preliminary autopsies conducted by the state and Floyd's family both ruled his death a homicide. The widely circulated arrest videos don't paint the entire picture of what happened to George Floyd. Additional video and audio from the body cameras of the key officers would reveal more about why the struggle began and how it escalated. The city quickly fired all 4 officers, and Chauvin has been charged with second-degree murder. Thomas Lane, J. Alexander Koenig, and Tu Tao were charged with aiding and abetting murder. But outrage over George Floyd's death has only spread further and further across the United States.
Can you hear us now? Okay, I hope you guys can all hear us now. I apologize for that. I appreciate you guys all tuning in to tonight's special episode. We just felt like at Ballaholics that we had to talk about this. There was an elephant in the room, and we really wanted to discuss the events that recently transpired. So at first, I just want to say to everyone that are watching why we're doing this. Once again, we just feel like it's our responsibility. We have a platform, and if you have a platform, we feel like you should be talking about it on your platform. Ian Mills, Sauce, Z, happy that you guys are all here tonight to talk about this. Also want to say that we're actually going to have live callers tonight. We believe that we were a little hesitant. We weren't sure whether to have live callers tonight or not. But at Ballaholics, we just felt like we need to have these really tough conversations, even if we don't want to. It's not the funnest thing to talk about, obviously, but we feel like we need to talk about what transpired. So let's just start. Who wants to start? We can start with Z. What were your reactions just from this George Floyd incident, man?
Yes, thanks, Sam. So initially, I heard rumors about everything. I did not see the video until I was hearing most of the rumors. Obviously, the video is very tragic. Outright racism. Into the video, I've been hearing a lot of rumors that either you were on the you were on the fence of racism prior to this, or you wholeheartedly believe that there were racism in America that happened. And then people were saying that, after this video occurred, a lot of those people that were on the fence were kind of now seeing that racism is still existent, in America. So I think that video is kind of, just blatant evidence. So with that being said, I think BLM, the protesting, the rioting, the looting, I think all of that is awesome in terms of gaining awareness for what happened. And BLM is doing a really good job in terms of its platform here in America. It's becoming something that's trending, so much so that white folks, black folks, Asians, Spanish people, every race of every kind is just seeing that this is outright injustice. And there's really no kind of cover up. There's no kind of band-aid for it. Folks that are kind of, I guess, still rejecting the idea of what's happening. It's kind of clear that they have more racist beliefs or conservative beliefs or whatever. So yeah, and even with that being said, this is also taking place. Protests are also taking place in China, Japan, France, Germany, all over the world. So there were like people talking about how this is kind of bigger than the civil rights movement in terms of a protesting aspect and just terms of mobilizing and how many people are behind it. So I think that's really, really interesting. As a black man myself, I stand in solidarity with BLM and what they're doing to put forth effort, to this very tragic situation. It kind of reminds me of the Michael Brown situation back in 2014. The I Can't Breathe. There was video evidence of a man from New York City, I believe it was Brooklyn. A cop was kneeling on his neck, or somehow they had him up against the ground and he couldn't breathe. Similar to what happened with George Floyd. And, the I Can't Breathe hashtag became very, very huge after that in 2014. So I think this is very, very similar. There's a lot of parallels with that. And, with that being said, I'm hoping that, the fire continues to flame. And that we keep seeing changes happening. They're talking about defunding police in Minneapolis. They're talking about a bunch of things, and I think these are all progressive conversations that need to continue to be had. So I'm really excited for the future, and I just hope that we can keep this strong effort up.
Sauce?
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I think Z had a great point. Like, he had all great points, and I want to expand on that. I mean, firstly, I agree with you 100% on the unity and solidarity. I think it was amazing to see how many people were supportive of it. I think it was important to see even across the globe. Like, I saw Sweden had some, Japan, obviously America was huge. It was the source of it. And I think it's important that everyone stays united in this fight against racism. And I think the most important thing you said, or one of the most important things that you said was just that people forget that it's still very much happening today. And I think it's easy to forget, but the civil rights movement was like 60-ish, 70-ish years ago. It was very recent, and people's great grandmothers or grandmothers, grandparents, they all went through it. So, this is still very much real. It happened. You saw what happened in 2014 with Mike Brown, I Can't Breathe. And then look at 2020, same thing's still going on. So I think it's important to know that this is a problem that's ongoing. It's happened in the past and it will continue in the future unless something's being done.
Yes.
So I think, like you said, it was great that people are like making actions to actually make a difference. I think, spreading awareness was huge. I was extremely impressed with how many people were supportive of the Blackout Tuesday. And I know it's just an Instagram post. It doesn't mean much, but it's nice to see all that support. I think people are, on Instagram and Twitter and stuff, you see people spreading these charities, these donations around a lot more. And I think that's really important. Also showing like different messages. They're trying to spread information that people might not know about. I think that's also huge. So I think information is also very important too. And of course, I'm not a Black man myself. I understand. I could sympathize with those problems. As a person of color, like I also am 100% in this, in this kind of movement to get equality. And I think everyone should, regardless if they're white, person of color, or Black. I think everyone should see the importance of it. So I think, like you said, this is still an ongoing, battle. But I'm happy that from what we've seen, this is like the civil rights movement in 2020. And in terms of actual people, it's actually more. So that's absolutely like insane. I'm very happy to see that. But of course, I'm not going to be happy until we see change, And I think another big thing is that I don't know if, the whole George Floyd, I don't know if those officers would have got arrested if it wasn't for the video and if it wasn't for all the public outrage. Because I think we saw how long it took for that to happen. And then they ultimately gave him second-degree murder, which, I mean, it kind of seems like first degree if you ask me. So I think it's important that, we keep that pressure on, because otherwise they're going to try to sweep it on the rug. I mean, look at Breonna Taylor. Now people are bringing that attention, but, cops were innocent. They were found innocent after that. And I think they very much weren't. And I think it's important for us to keep that pressure on to make sure they're held accountable for their actions.
Ian?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree that both what happened to Breonna Taylor and George Floyd was awful. And it does make you think, as Sauce did mention a little bit, does make you think, like, if these two things happened, and very recently, and have gained a lot of traction within the past month or so, or 3 weeks, whatever it may have been, how many times has it happened without, a video? Like, if you look at, these are, Minneapolis is a very, very populated area, and populous city. But if you go down to, the country, where it's a town of 700 people, there's not going to be someone with a video camera all the time. You know what I mean? And then, as someone who is white, I will say that, I have seen a lot of people who I know who at one point in time I was close with, who have like said, well, just because I'm not saying anything about it doesn't mean I don't care. But I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think if that video, or if, all the interactions have not infuriated you, or at least made you sad, then it gets to a point where it's like, maybe not maybe, you definitely are a part of the problem. And what I think what Z said earlier, where it was like, people who were on the fence, and I think there were a lot of people who were kind of in this bubble, who were in this like shield, where they were like, well, racism, it exists, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be. And then not just after this happened, not just the reaction to the video itself and to the murder, but also to other white people's reactions, where you have Trump calling quarantine protesters like good people who are just angry, and then calling Black Lives Matters protesters thugs. It's like, well, what's the difference between the two? It's just race. It's like, obviously that's a racist thing that the president said. And then you go through looking at comments and people who have kids who are like outwardly saying things like, if it ain't white, it ain't right. And it's like, this is it's people are outwardly outing themselves and have no shame. And it's I think Z was right when it's like, it is opening up a lot of people's eyes. And I agree with them that we got to back protests, riots, whatever it may be. And I think a big thing that has been mentioned is a lot of the looting, a lot of the riots, have been antagonized by the police wholeheartedly. I mean, there are videos to this day of peaceful protests going awry because a police officer kicks someone who's just standing there or just on their knees. And I think a lot of the thing is, there's a huge difference between our generation where the four of us are standing here and solidarity and trying to spread a message, and you have people who are a little older, maybe in the 50s and 60s, who, when they were raising their kids, always told them to treat others unto the way they would want to be treated. But now, when the situation is reversed, they're not doing that because there is a being of racism inside them, whether or not they want to admit it or not. So I think it's the videos aren't gaining media traction on like news where people see it. So I think spreading evidence, not just to Twitter, but to showing it to people who are ignorant to the situation just because they may not be exposed to it, I think is very important as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you guys all said, and I just want to preface my comments by just saying, like, I'm white and I have white privilege, and a lot of us do, and we can't relate. I mean, I was on a road trip a couple weeks ago when I saw this video, and I was talking to my friends, and I was like, listen, like, if we got pulled over in Wyoming or any of these states, like, it stinks knowing that I feel like if we got pulled over by a cop that we get looked at differently if we're white or black. Like, race plays an influence there. When I saw this video, I was absolutely disgusted. It was disgusting, despicable, horrific, petrifying, horrifying, just disgusting. The officer Derek Chauvin had his knees on the man's neck. There were 4 officers and there's 1 person. 4 armed officers and 1 unarmed person. And listen, okay, he maybe he did something. He did the $20, but it didn't justify death. It was just disgusting. I feel like I'm lost for words. We have a sports show, and I feel like I can't even articulate what I want to say just because all the emotions of even watching that video, it sickens me. It just sickens me to death. And it sucks because I feel like we've come a long way from slavery and we've made advances towards equality for all. Because in the long run, when you think about the grand scheme of things, the ideal situation is all lives should matter. It's the ideal scheme. But in reality, that's not what it is right now, because we have one group that's being oppressed. And in the past, it's always been like this. It's been for the past 400 years. And people aren't taking a stand. And you have to recognize the fact when there's an oppressed group, when they're being oppressed, in order for all lives to matter, Black lives need to matter. And I think that we all need to recognize that fact. And the other thing I want to say is, I think one thing that's going to help us get through this is we all have to be together. We all have to stay together here. We have to have these difficult conversations because it's very difficult. It's very difficult to just put these aside because some of these conversations don't want to be had. But they need to be had with everyone. Everyone needs to be involved. And yeah, that's what I want to say. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, I had all these notes that I prepared for this, and just the magnitude of this moment, it's just crazy. Just talking about it and just thinking about it, it's just sickening. And it's too bad this had to happen. And the other thing that I found to be really upsetting was you had the one officer with his knee on the guy's neck, and you had these 3 other officers that were there just sitting idly by. The 2 other officers, their legs were there. They had their knees on Derek Chauvin's legs, and then the other officer was, not letting bystanders come through that were saying that he couldn't breathe. The man was begging for his mom. He couldn't breathe. He said he couldn't breathe multiple times, and he was calling for his mom. And that part, calling for the mom, it just terrible.
Shatters your heart.
It just breaks your heart. And it's just really unfortunate that we live in a country like this. And I want to say just real quick to the people that are watching this that are saying blue lives matter, ideally, like they should matter. All should matter, but that's not the issue. That's not why we're here. Like there's a reason why this is happening, and it's because over time the African American community has been oppressed, and there's been economically, politically, and as far as we have come, we have so much more that we can do.
Yeah, I guess to that, Sam, when folks say all lives should matter, ideally, right, that's the goal. So in order to achieve that goal of all lives should matter, then we have to acknowledge minority groups and their oppression. And making their lives matter is the task at hand. That should be the priority because of the history of slavery, the history of Jim Crow, the history of economic inequality, social inequality, inferior school systems, you know, urban neighborhoods, with lack of resources. That stuff all of those things put POCs at a disadvantage. And it's easier for police brutality and violence to occur in these neighborhoods. So with that being said, focusing on Black Lives Matter is what's most important. The police have advantages. White people have advantages with white privilege. So it's like, how can you focus on the already privileged and not acknowledge the less privileged? That's the conversation that needs to be had more. And then we can work towards discussions of all lives should matter. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you too. And one thing that I saw, if you use like Instagram and Twitter a lot, that I liked, someone used the analogy of if your house is on fire and your neighbor's house is fine, saying all houses matter doesn't do much. It's like my house matters because it's currently on fire. So, we have to address the things that are currently happening because, if your house is not on fire, yes, your house does matter, but it doesn't need to be treated. And that's the same situation here where, clearly there needs to be help and there needs to be awareness for this. And it's like, that's what should be brought to attention. You don't want to do whataboutism and then take away from that point. So I think that's also important.
Right.
I agree with that. I think the issue at hand is just it's undisputable, and when there's a group that doesn't have equal footing, and that's through the past history of all the things that have happened, like he alluded to, like I said, the Jim Crow laws, slavery, and even now, civil rights movements with Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and now we're at a time where, again, this was said earlier, and I'm just going to reiterate it. People thought, oh yeah, racism, it's died down. That's an old thing in the past. But it's really not, because it's a shame that some people still have that sentiment. They still feel that way. And then the other thing is, I think some other people are just misguided. I think some people, they mean well, but maybe they're afraid to speak up. Maybe they're not actually racist themselves, but they're afraid to speak up. And when I was considering, when we were talking about possibly doing this show, I know that doing this show, you get people that like you'll be happy that you did it. People that will praise you, say, you know what, Sam, that's great that you guys decided to do the show. And at the flip side, then you have people that say, well, Sam, this is a sports show, so why are you covering this, or this is a sports show? And I think at the end of the day, when you really think about issues like this, I think I'm going to put it like this, okay? One day, I'm going to sound very negative right now. One day we're all going to die, okay? Just catch on with me. At the very end of your life, the only thing that you got to think about is, did you do what you feel like was right in your heart your entire life? Did you do what was right? Did you stand by your principles? And I don't think any of us are going for praise, appreciation or criticisms of anything. You do what's right in your heart, and you do what's right with your principles. So if you feel like something's right, you got to do it. And I did it with the sports show, with the platform, and I think people need to speak up if they feel like they have a certain opinion, but they are afraid to speak up on that opinion. If they feel like people are racist, if they feel like people are doing things that are detrimental to society, you have an obligation, you have a duty to speak up.
I completely agree with that, Sam. Like you said, at the end of our lives, we just want to understand that, did we live by, the principles that we set for ourselves, and what was in our heart and what's right in our heart. And that's why I think it's so important, as you said as well, to utilize your platform to speak up. It's almost a duty. And, I think that's just so super important. So yeah, I think that a lot of that stuff is going on right now. People are utilizing their platforms, even if they're smaller platforms, just like Instagram pages or even YouTube channels. People are speaking up and speaking out. So I feel like this is gaining more awareness. So like I said earlier, keeping that fire going is the only way to really mobilize change. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not a political issue, it's a human rights issue. I think that is where people need to understand. It's not like Trump versus Biden, you know what I mean? I think people want to make it out that way. But something I do actually that is somewhat political that I did want to bring up was so Derek Chauvin, I believe I pronounced his name right. It doesn't matter if I did or not, but I think it was in 2007. He had killed I believe it was a Native American man, and was pardoned by Senator Amy Klobuchar, who ran as a Democrat for the primaries this year. So something I wanted to bring up that I thought was important was, we talked earlier about Trump being racist and very clearly being racist, and I think we can all probably agree with that. At least what he said was, and it gets to a point where it's like, well, if they don't care about you, we kind of assume that there gets to a point where most politicians don't care. They will pretend as if they do. We saw earlier today, or I guess it was yesterday, our own governor was saying something like he wanted to keep the Christopher Columbus statue up, and it's like people they say they care, but in their policy they have the ability to care, and they actually end up don't. So yeah, that's just kind of I don't want to get political about it, but obviously it is a human rights issue, but on both sides of the spectrum, it does seem to be falling through the cracks. Not it's being seen, but it's not many actions are being taken. I will say that.
I just have something I just want to say real quick before, if we're getting, I don't think that we should get too political, obviously, because our viewers are from a wide array of backgrounds. But I just want to say this. I just got a notification the meeting's gonna end in 10 minutes. That was already 40 minutes. That's incredible. I think that a problem that I'm seeing, and this is see this on social media platforms. I see it on Instagram, and I see it just in general. And I feel like we sort of create this paradigm of us versus them. This is where one side is right and one side is wrong. And, I think that in this case, obviously, we can all, rally around, racism should not be a thing. Racism is disgusting and has no place in our society. And at the end of the day, we should all have, all lives should matter at the end of the day. The problem is just how they get there. I think on Instagram, what I'm seeing is people are just ruling out other people. They're saying, people are posting Blue Lives Matter. That's all, and they're posting. Like, if you would have posted Black Lives Matter first, and then you do Blue Lives Matter, okay. But, and even Black Lives Matter people who are just automatically ruling out every single person in the Blue Lives. I just want to say, I feel like all opinions, should be, talked. Everyone should have a voice to talk, because I feel like that's the only way we can get change. Because if you put it like this, because obviously, I agree with, you guys, on this issue. We all agree on it. We're all agreement under this issue. We're all in solidarity. But the people that have these weird, racist thoughts, or just thoughts that aren't right, that we know for a fact aren't right. Like, for example, what Drew Brees said, I'm sure we all find to be insensitive. But I feel like in a way we need more people like Drew Brees to speak out, and we cannot ridicule people like that, because if we do ridicule people like Drew Brees and those kind of people, they will be reluctant to speak out. And if people are reluctant to speak out, then they are internalizing the ideas that they have, but they are not voicing those opinions, and they might create those racist thoughts in their head, and that can keep going in their head, and they're not going to bring it up. So I think that it's tough to do, and obviously I'm from a white privileged background, but I think that we need to be more open-minded towards all views, and we need to try and reason with them instead of trying to get at them emotionally and rule them out. We have to try and reason with them. Just try and reason, because I feel like sometimes we focus on the outputs too much, and we need to focus on why someone thinks the way they do. So if people are thinking that way, we need to try and truly try and understand them first, and then explain to them calmly and logically why they are wrong.
Yeah, Sam, I understand what you're saying, because I think a lot of times you fall into these echo chambers where you typically have Black Lives Matter, and then you typically have Blue Lives Matter. But it's like the only problem is a lot of times when you do share these posts and you talk about it, is that you're talking to the audience who already agrees with you. So it's kind of hard, because I think sometimes we should be able to talk with other people, because that way we'd have a different viewpoint, and we'll be able to one person's going to learn something. Either they're going to learn something, I'm going to learn something, or maybe both. But I think sometimes we do fall into that echo chamber where we hear the same voice over and over, but we're not able to talk to other people with different beliefs. I think that's also important to drive change, as you mentioned too. And that's hard. Like I don't think that's
It's
easy
so
to
hard,
do.
and I'm not.
Yeah,
I know I said
yeah.
that, and like I made it sound so simple, but it's really not, because sometimes people just say things that are just you know in your head they're completely wrong. They completely make no sense. They're out of place. They're insensitive, like the Drew Brees comment. But in the long run, you have to consider the fact that if you ridicule people and you rule them out and you yell at them and you rule them out, it's gonna create a sentiment where people like that aren't even gonna voice their opinions. They're gonna internalize it and they're gonna keep that going on. So it's so hard to do, and I know it's like a little naive for me to say, perhaps, but I feel like just to be logical and try and reason with every single human being, I feel like that's the way to go.
Z, are you good to talk? I just noticed you were on the run.
You right, Z?
Yes, I'm great. Actually, I have a special guest with me.
Oh wow.
Yes. Oh no, not Derek. Boy, the one and only.
Hey!
How you doing, bro? You good?
Sir.
How we doing, man?
We're on air right now.
Very tired.
If you want to share your
Let's
thoughts.
hear your opinion.
Yeah. So, are we just?
Get your face. We don't see your face. I think just like adjust the computer. And we have a couple minutes left on this Zoom call. So if for some reason it runs out, guys, and the people who are watching this, we are going to put on a video for you guys. We will set up a new Zoom call so you guys can continue watching us. But for now, we want to hear your thoughts just regarding this issue.
Yeah. So I have a lot of ups and downs going on right now. For one thing, I'm happy to see with the situation, a lot more people seem to be in the discussion. I don't know if it's just because of its trending, the fact that it's kind of trending. It's kind of like the the BLM Spirit Week. People call it. They're like, oh, da da da. They put up a post. They do their performative stuff and everything, and then eventually they kind of just stop caring. Because I know there's a lot of people who, in my family, there's only a couple of us out of dozens of cousins and aunts and uncles and everything that really care, that speak about it consistently. So I like to see more people get into the conversation, and not just the conversation, but the action, and to actually come to protests and come to physically be able to protect people and, be there in the flesh, because, we need people, we need, white folks, white men, people with those privileges to really step up and protect people, protect vulnerable people, and they're the ones that are doing the organizing, people of color doing the organizing. So we need to give them all the support. But I feel like there's progress happening. First time I've ever seen police with riot shields in Binghamton, and that's because they're prepared, but they're also, I think they're intimidated by it. I don't know. That's how I feel. Thank
you, Soup.
Yeah.
Thanks, Soup.
Did you want to introduce yourself real quick? I didn't hear what your name was.
All right. Yeah. My name is Sam, but I go by Soup.
Soup.
And we go back. Me and Zion.
Yes.
The Supreme Soup, if you want. But yeah, it's been a crazy month.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's been a crazy month, and even before that, there was another thing. What was it? 2 weeks ago, I heard a story. What was the story? You guys familiarized me on the story. It was the one before George Floyd. There was like some people in a truck that like. Gee, did you hear that story?
Ahmaud Arbery.
There was another story. I recall hearing from a couple friends. Where I think it was in Atlanta, and these people in a truck were driving. These white people driving in a truck. And they saw a black person, and then they assumed they thought for some reason that they robbed somewhere, they stole something, and they shot the person and killed them. It was a story that I heard from somewhere, from some source. But it's again like it's been a crazy month because it's not just one incident. It's not like it's just George Floyd. There was that incident, and then there's Breonna Taylor, and then there's Eric Gardner, who got killed in front of a grocery store in 2014. I can't breathe. So this is a recurring theme in our history. So we all have an obligation, white, black, Asian, any kind of race, any kind of person, as long as you're a decent human being, to want change, to make change, to speak of change. And again, like people posting on Instagram, you know, the black screens, like it's cool. And I don't criticize. I go by something. Like, I don't like criticizing what anyone else does. I like to worry about myself. But I think we have to really, spreading awareness is the first step, but really living it. And, you know, every single day, if you see injustice, you have to call it as it is. And I think through doing that, that is going to create change in the long run.
Yeah. We good?
Yeah, so what do you call it? Right now, it looks like that we are running out of time for this Zoom call. We have a minute left, so I think we're gonna throw on another video for our viewers, and we will be back after this break.
Rebound Trent up to Dame at the buzzer. Got it.
I apologize. That's not the video. Give me 1 second, guys. The wrong video came up for some reason.
We'll take that shot across.
That's so weird. Why is that happening? All right. Well, the video's not up. Please bear with me, guys.
Hayward lets it fly. It won't fall. Andre boards its feet from behind the timeline.
Of George Floyd's brother speaking. And for some reason this basketball video came up, which I have no idea why. So, yes.
The soap you shower with?
Bear with me, guys.
Because I'll let you in on a little industry secret. Most name brand bars and body washes you rub on your skin are classified by the FDA as synthetic.
Floyd says he is claustrophobic and refuses to enter the police car. During the struggle, Floyd appears to turn his head to address the officers multiple times.
Not turn out the way I wanted
According
to
to
for
the
now.
complaints,
I'm going to throw a video on for you guys. Just give me 1 second.
breathe.
We're running into some technical difficulties. I really apologize. I sincerely apologize for that.
On Tuesday, George Floyd was buried in Houston after being killed by a police officer in Minneapolis. The next day, George's brother Philanese Floyd testified before the House Judiciary Committee about a sweeping piece of legislation that Democrats have crafted on justice and police reform.
I'm here to ask you to make it stop. Stop the pain.
Vice News spoke exclusively with Floyd and his attorney, Ben Crump.
I feel good that people are looking up right now, seeing what's going wrong with this nation. Black people die every day. King got killed. Trayvon Martin got killed. Eric Gardner got killed. Breonna Taylor got killed. Everybody is dying, but now the world is uniting. It's making me feel good inside, but I still have a lot of pain. My family has a lot of pain. This world has a lot of pain because we demand justice and we want to see justice. We want to see those cops convicted.
Do you think that the politicians are actually going to do something this time?
Changing culture and behavior of police starts at the top. And I honestly believe the tragic killing of his brother, George Floyd, gives us the best chance I've ever seen since I've been a civil rights lawyer of having real systematic reform. Because you have all these protesters marching in the streets and they are demanding that the leaders hear their voice. And I believe they're going to hear their voice and we're going to have this George Floyd law passed.
Do you think that the politicians are actually going to do something this time?
If you watch that video and you have at least 1 ounce of humanity in your body, you will want to change this world. You will vote for the right thing. People being killed every day.
Okay, so I am back right now. Right now, we're actually just waiting for Z and Sauce to join the Zoom call. Ian might have to leave early, so it looks like me and Sauce and Z are going to continue this discussion. All right, it looks like Z has to head out actually. So I mean, honestly, we might just end right now. Not the way I wanted to end. This video was pretty disorganized due to me, so I apologize for that. We might do a rerun tomorrow just to try and not a live video, because right now I'm using some software that's very difficult to use. I don't have my exact hand on it. So, but overall, I hope you guys enjoyed our discussion regarding this issue at Ballaholics. This is something that we felt like we had to do. We had to speak out on this issue because we feel like silence is compliance, and it's as simple as that. Once again, my biggest advice for you guys watching at home would just be to stay informed. Yeah, my mic's working. My biggest advice, honestly, is just listen and just always try and learn, because there's a lot of things, especially for me, having a white background, being white privileged, that a lot of luxuries that I had. So just listening and understanding and being compassionate and kindness goes a long way, because we all have this fight together. We're all in this fight towards equality for all. So really appreciate you guys watching tonight's edition, tonight's special episode, and we'll probably do a rerun tomorrow to post one, just make one to post, because we feel like this one was just a little disorganized.